Always takes a second. All right. So here we are. Surprise! Or is it? Some of you might realize. Hold on a minute here. Technology. It's all technology. Hello. Do. We're doing a whole different look about things. So, my name is Lana Labonte, and welcome to my living room. I am here to uplift, support, inspire, and hopefully that empowers you to be the best version of you you are here and meant to be and do. Welcome. Get your cup of Mo or Joe or whatever type of love warmth that's in it, and let's sit and have a discussion. I know. Haven't been live for a good few weeks. I've been in the birthing phase. I still am. And essentially, I want you to know there's some really cool stuff going on. At least that's what I'm saying and feeling in my life. So I have to do one thing before we continue, because I'm still new to this whole, I got to figure all out. Yes, my background's IT, but at the same time, I sometimes have to navigate and remember how to play in this realm. Okay. There we are. Hi, Shakti. Off the Italy? Nope, not yet. This includes messages and help. Okay. I had to set it up so I can see your comments, because if I am on Zoom, which I'm zooming through, and then I can't see your comments because they don't come up on the Zoom right now. So here we are. New format. We're changing things up. I got a lot of exciting things coming down the pipe. And I hope that you are just as excited as I am to hear what is coming, what is on its way. It is time. Been in a pregnant pause for a good 15 plus years. So I'm finally putting some things together. And I hope you're all with bated ears. Ready, aim, fire. Or on with the show. All right. A couple times I've been wanting to go live, but I've had so much going on. Like when I have something on my plate, I usually don't have just one thing. It either rains, it either pours, or it's dry spell. That's just, and I've accepted that in my life. So the title of this particular theme, this themed video we got going on, is all about duality. It's about polarity. The duplicity in the languaging that whirls around us. The word world is a big whirl. It's all over the place. It's whirling, it's energy, it's flow, it's expansion, it's contraction, it's going up, it's going down, it's going out, it's going back in. Because life is like a box of chocolates, and you never know what you're going to get until you open it up and take a bite. Could be salty, might be spicy, could be sweet, maybe kind of bland, maybe vanilla. But we're here to mix it up. We're not here to be attached to everything. And a conversation I've been having the past few days, and this is what the theme comes from, is in the past, I'll even get up and explain it. In the past, I've explained how in this world, in this life, we are basically like a pendulum, or we're basically holding on, right? And in this way of holding on, we don't realize the pendulum's going to swing depending on where our mentality takes us, where the mindset, where the focus, where the attention, where the energy goes, attention flows, right? So if you're on a pendulum, let's just say you're holding on to an anchor. Imagine just this is neutrality. You're right here. But in the world of contrast, duality, polarity, The yin, the yang, the feminine, the masculine, the good, the bad, the beautiful, the ugly, the joyful, the painful. Shows your imbalance. But neutrality doesn't see that. That's wholeness. This is wholeness, right? I'm going to do like a Grover scene. I'm near or I'm far. I'm either swinging in this direction in the pain, or I'm swinging in this direction in high joy. However the pendulum swings, it is going to have the momentum. It's going to keep up with you and where you're at. It's going to show up to you where you're at. So if you are over here in the pain and then you decide, I don't want to feel that pain. I don't want to. Guess what? When you numb the pain, you numb the joy. You can't have one without the other. And the deeper you dive, the higher you rise, whether you're willing to feel the pain or not. That pain will become your purpose. That pain will be your driver. We are inspired. Spirit within us comes from inspire. It's the fuel that drives us. It is a creative force within us. You can numb the pain all you want. But as a result, you also numb the joy. And when you have numbed yourself out, you end up missing out. So if you're someone out there who says, I don't want to feel the pain, I don't want to feel what I felt when such and such, because you're always basing it off of the past. The mind is so clever, it'll try to tell you, I'm going to save you from that. I'm going to protect you from that. It can't do that. The pain is a gift of your joy, and the joy is the gift of your pain. And that throughout the course of your life, you're going to experience it again and again. Joy, pain, cycles. And it's also showing you where attention goes, energy flows, and how your life, it goes through cycles. The mind will compare to the past, and it will assume that based on the past, it can predict the future. So you never go into the future. The mind is always in the past, and that's another one we can debunk. Because the average person will say, well, I'm afraid for the future, so I'm thinking of the future. I'm projecting the future. No, you're not. You're not even in the future. You can't be in the future. You can only be in the past or in the present. Even the thought of the future is really a projection of the past because you're comparing it. It's a contrast. If we didn't have contrast, we wouldn't know whether or not we were in balance or out of balance. That's part of the gift of the duality and the polarity of this life. And the duplicity in languaging teaches us that there's always more than one meaning to everything. Now, what do I mean by that? Oh, I got notes. Because I was writing like a crazy person yesterday, and today I'm like, oh, this is good stuff. When it comes through, it just comes through, it pours through. Here's what happens. If you have unresolved traumas, you operate from those traumas, conscious or unconscious. Normally it's unconscious, because we're blinded to what the true situation is. We're only seeing through our trauma eyes. This is the only filter we can see through. Unresolved trauma, when you push it down and you suppress it, it will show up and express it to you in your outside external world. Constantly, there is a reminder, which is an interesting dynamic, because then your mind is freaking out going, oh my gosh, that's reminding me of my past and the pain. Isn't it interesting? People will say they don't want to re-experience the pain, but they're constantly, it's re-emerging, saying, hey, what you suppress will continue to express until you address it. So you can try to push it away, but your denial of it doesn't go away. The fact of the matter is, it is there for your attention. Your pain becomes your purpose. Your shadow is actually your gift. All the things you want to dismiss, are what cause dis-ease and dysfunction in your life. The more willing you are to dive deep into it, the more you will rise higher and lighter in this world. The pain has purpose. It's just a teacher. It's not going to harm you. It's not going to kill you. There's always a silver lining. There's always a blessing. But the more you avoid it, the more it comes after you, because it's that tension release. If you're against something or for something, it is the same energy. And then let's take that as duplicity, as dual meaning, for and against. Against the same thing. You're for it or against it. You're either fighting it or complying with it. It's a mind fuck, let's just say it. You can't understand it unless you're in it. Or maybe you can't understand it when you're in it and you have to be outside of it. But if you can go within and recognize the amount of energy you exert fighting something is the same amount of energy as if you were complying with it. When it doesn't align with you, it shows, which is why I like to say it's a shit show. So your denial of it doesn't make it go away, nor does complying with it, because there it is right away. What happens in those those are the contrasts. They're two parts of the whole. The neutrality is recognizing it's there. And in neutrality, you won't even notice the opposite sides of it, the opposing this versus that. Okay, it's a little riddled in saying that. You create the split duality in your reality. Essentially, you're already establishing the separation because you are yourself separate within. When you are not whole, when you're fragmented, you only see one part of the whole in life. So, for example, whatever's going on in the world, this is a conscious collaboration, people. This is the collective consciousness at play. We are all picking and contributing from the pool of the collective See, it's a tongue teaser because it's alliteration. We are all a part of the collective consciousness. So what you see out in the world is always going to be a reflection of something within you, because what you see is where you're at. You're seeing through your filtered lenses, your past experiences. In wholeness, you see the duplicity, you see the duality and the polarity, and you're not triggered by it. When you're fragmented, the trigger is indicating what it is that still is not whole within you. Because you're only seeing one side of the story when you're triggered. You're only seeing your trauma. It's like saying you can always be in a negative mode or mindset, right? You always find the negative in things. Have you ever noticed that? There are people who can pick out all the negative. I was like that. There are periods in my life where I'm like, wow, whew, I'm catching myself finding everything that's wrong and having like this negative dialogue in my own head. But as a result of that, what I'm also aware of is that I was unable to see the polarity of it, the other side of the coin. I could see everything that was going wrong. I could not see what was going right. How does that affect the world? Well, you can be a part of all of it, but you have to be in awareness of how it affects you in your life. Your life is a melange. You're only here to have experiences and not get attached to everything. Creating meaning, labeling, establishing separation in it all. This is where the suffering comes from. It's not being whole. It's feeling fragmented and something's missing. You know, this is an old gesticulation that the Italians do, and this means, you know, like I'm missing something, like grasping for air, for seams, for threads. You know, like what's, you know, empty-handed even. being in wholeness opens you up to the duality and the polarity. You could see everything for what it is, as opposed to when you are still operating from those spaces of unresolved childhood traumas and unmet needs, the survival mode. All you can see through the binoculars of pain and trauma is more pain and trauma. Whereas there's always a blessing and a lesson from it too, right? There's always something that in your life you can look back on and go, wow, if that hadn't happened, this might not have happened, right? Can you relate to that? Let me know in the comments. Am I even touching upon anything that is striking a aha nerve in you? Because a lot of people out there, and I've been there, so I know, I can only speak from my personal experience. When your nervous system is fried, you're in chronic stress, fight, flight, freeze, or fawn, then you're operating from the pain mode, from those places that your mind wants to protect you from. And addiction at the root core is about numbing the pain in this idea that if you can control it, if you don't feel pain, then you're not going to repeat the same lessons. But in reality, you're perpetuating it because the pain just keeps showing up. The lesson keeps on showing up until you address it. What you suppress will express until you address. You have to feel it because feeling is the truth. Feeling will be the revealing of what is still needing healing. And if you've been listening to me long enough, healing is not my favorite word because it implies that we are broken. And you're not broken. You're just fragmented and you need to reclaim your parts to be whole. So again, what you see is a reflection of your fragmentation, and it's not your wholeness. Once you reclaim those pieces of yourself and you become whole, then you start to see the bigger picture and not just a piece, one side of the half of the whole. Does that make sense? We have so much that we withhold from ourselves. And my last video, I was talking about, we're taught to suppress our uniqueness. In a world where they want you to be a cookie cutter, carbon copy of, copycat of indoctrination nation, put you through the conveyor belt of go into the schools and come out a good follower. Do what you're told and don't question anybody. Like, really? We all have unique gifts to share in this world. And if you admired somebody and they told you were too much and that something you did uniquely and naturally, that was your inner child's expression, if they ever said to you, I don't like when you do that, that's too much, you need to stop, that could have changed your entire life trajectory. Because as a result of admiring that person, you also decided that you couldn't be who you naturally were being. And then you go through your life wondering what's missing. And then one day you wake up and you realize there was something that you really love to do and you start doing it again. Because this is just a natural part of life. We return to our passions. I found as I came back to the United States, I was reminded that I was coming back to everything I ever used to love and do naturally when I was younger. That although I went and I had this whole other life, I returned back to where I started. It all began here, right? Like in a lot of ways, people who have midlife crises and such, it ends up being they end up returning back home in some way, shape, or form. Not talking your childhood home, but home in here. Home is where the heart is. The true expression of our heart and soul. And what your inner child, which is wise, still within you holds. It's a truth. Your body will tell you the truth. And it will always tell on the mind that is playing the BS game, belief systems. because we have to call BS out on our belief systems. If we don't, who else will? Do you really want somebody else to call it out on you? Oof. When somebody else is the one who wakes you up, it usually stings the most, right? So it's a lot easier, but it's a lot harder when you have to police yourself. You have to kind of like call your own BS out. Like I do that with the mirror and I'm like, oof, that was rough. And that was just coming from me. If it came from somebody else, I'd be like, that's humbling. It's very humbling. So going back to this duplicity, everything has dual meaning. It really does. And when you get more in tune with yourself, because you have to understand when you numb the pain, you numb the joy. Basically, what you've done is shut down your ability to feel, to tap into your senses. You are a hypersensitive being. So you are meant to be sensitive. Don't ever let anybody tell you you're too sensitive. Because my response to those people is always, you'd know if I was insensitive, wouldn't you? You'd probably be calling that one out a lot more than if I'm being too sensitive. And so I saw a video earlier today, and it was really a good reminder, and it tied in perfectly with this. The reason that people yell, it was a little deeper than I think most people could understand if they watched the video. It was explained and expressed that the reason people yell at each other to be heard, I mean, what do you think the answer is going to be to that? Well, they don't feel like they're being heard. It's stronger than that. It's deeper than that. It's really that the connection is broken between the hearts. That when two people are trying to be heard, they're operating from their trauma. That's number one. That's the most important thing to recognize. It's not even about the other person. They're actually re-experiencing all of their pain and trauma in that moment. To be elevated in your voice means you feel disconnected from feeling. It means your heart is shut down and closed. So how do you think the other person is receiving and conveying, or you're conveying the message, and if they are receiving the message? 9 times out of 10, if you're yelling, most people shut down from that too. So you can't have a shut down heart and expect your message or whatever it is you try to express to be received. Because what essentially is happening is it's hitting an energetic wall. And if you have two people, both hearts are going to shut down because the other person feels attacked while you are attacking what is really a boomerang effect, because it's never the other person that we're mad at. It's usually ourselves. So when the heart is shut down, that creates even deeper disconnect energetically. So there will not be a receptive flow between the hearts. And so the elevation in the voice is really because they feel so distant and disconnected from one another. And they don't realize that's really what it is. But at the root of it is the trauma that is running that show, that they are re-experiencing everything traumatizing throughout their entire life in that moment to even create that heightened sense of emotion. And as we become emotional, we become irrational. So we start to say and do things that are totally out of our character, out of desperation. And as this video continued, it also expressed when two people are in love and their hearts are wide open, then they turn around and they could be whispering, and it's completely conveyed and felt because their hearts are so open. And it doesn't matter how close you are physically, but how open you are spiritually and energetically. That's a huge one right there. Remember, you're not broken, so you don't need to be fixed, but you want to be whole. And that's what we all seek. Hello, Pamela and Shakti. So I'll read what I wrote because I thought this was really good. So being in wholeness is what opens you up to seeing the duality and the polarity and everything around you. So where somebody who is fragmented is going to see over here all the bad stuff. They're going to be completely unaware of all the good stuff over here. Or how many times in your past have you looked back and realized, you know what? That wasn't as bad as I thought it was. It actually brought me to where I am today. So it's usually hindsight, right? In hindsight, you're looking back going, I can actually see how that worked out in my favor. How about that? In the moment, you're not going to see it because you're blinded by your trauma. Your trauma is mastering your whole experience. It's hijacked you. It's the wetico. It's the mind trying to protect you. And reality is creating a whole shit show as a result of it. Again, what you suppress will express until you address. Creative and just the way it comes through. So people who are fragmented, have unresolved trauma, can only hold and see themselves around them. Light is going to show up as they are versus how things truly are. You're only going to see one half of the picture in your trauma. In your fragmentation, again, fragmentation means you don't have all the parts. So you're not going to see all the parts. You're only going to see a part of the parts. And it's the part that you still hold on to that you won't let go of. You see things as you are. So the energy imprint amplifies that old trauma and triggers in their life. The trauma will attract your triggers. It will show up outside of you and you'll try to play the game of, well, I don't know why this keeps happening to me. I don't understand. You can't because you're in it. Unless you're willing to step back and look at your life and reflect. This is what meditation and journaling is all about. Like, okay, something comes up, you sit down, you start writing. What, as a result of this trigger, really got shuffled inside of me? What really stirred me? What memories started popping in? Where did I feel it in my body? Let's name that. What does that feel like? Ugh, felt like a knife in my stomach. Reminded me of a time when I was a little kid and like I really was embarrassed because I didn't do something and my parents called me out and people heard and I was put on the spot and I never wanted to be used as a, the showstopper that this is what happened. It was so embarrassing. Like, you know what I mean? Like stuff starts pouring through when you start addressing it. But you have to be willing to address it because otherwise what you suppress will express. Where you only see negative, you can end up being blinded to what is really going on in front of you. Like literally it's in front of your face, but you can't see past the negativity, past the trauma, through the filters, the perspectives that your mind is throwing up there to protect you with. So you're missing the whole picture and what all exists right in front of you. In that same time and moment. It exists in that moment. And some people, it's just like when you tell a story, and let's say there's 3 of you, and each person was at the same event, and you assume they all had the same experience, but in reality, they all have a different story and account of what occurred. That's the same thing, because everybody has different filters, different perspectives, different experiences in life in general. Not one person has a duplicate. That's a fact. You may relate on certain topics of conversation. Oh, I went to that concert. Oh my gosh, I really like the way they sang the song and da 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 da. But it was still experienced differently. The relation we have with another really just gives us an experience of ourselves through them as we relate. That's why relationships are so important and why we need each other and why we were never meant to hide out in monasteries and caves, away from humans, and we're meant to be in unity, hence humanity. All of us are like this. We all have our traumas. Every single one of us has something, been there, and not one is better, worse, higher, lower. They're just experiences. And then when you compare yourself, that's where you start labeling and separating. And yes, we all do the comparison game, conscious or unconscious. We can only be open to what we're willing to see and hear and no more. So remember that when somebody doesn't get what your message is, what you're trying to convey, because they're only going to show up to you where they're at, and vice versa. So the way that we're engaging with one another is based on, again, how whole or fragmented we are. Are you bringing all the pieces? Are you a puzzle piece waiting to be put back together? Breakthrough, breakdown, broken pieces, brought back to peace. We're all seeking some form of peace. See how the word peace has duplicitous meanings as well? You know, you could just take one word and just throw it out there and see what's the first thing that comes up to mind. If you say the word peace, this is a great example too, because peace is the first thing people think of. The opposite of war. Everything seems to be at war these days. But the biggest war is within us, not around us. What's around us is a reflection of what's going on in us. But we have to be humbled enough and willing to see that, instead of saying, oh, it's not me, it's them, and I don't like that about that person, which is really you judging you. Because again, you're judging yourself because you're comparing yourself. You can't get away from that truth. That truth right there is what gives the truth. Yeah, it is a truth. But see, again, it's also based on your truth and what you put meaning to. And again, you're putting it in the little box of separation, and we make it so much more complicated than it really is. Can we just say that? So again, like I'm over here reading this for a reason, because I've had a lot of drop-ins. Let's just say that. So life will give us our unconscious until we make ourselves conscious of it. It will feel like a struggle until you step back and wonder why you're resisting and what it is really that you're resisting. Because the struggles are only because we deny and we push against something. Resistance is futile. You fight it, it fights back. If it doesn't come natural, then maybe you shouldn't be doing it. As opposed to sometimes we feel we have to force things rather than let our innate natural power guide us, following the flow of our souls, as I like to think first thing when I start my practice in the morning. We have to align to our heart and souls more than anything, especially in these times that will try to hijack and reclaim our loyalty outside of ourselves. What you suppress will be expressed in your body, because it is the tattletail of your mind. It's always going to kinesiology. It's going to go, ooh, I'm weak, because that's a lie. That's a blatant lie. And the more you tell yourself and fight yourself in your own mind, your battlefield, the mind will actually cause your body to do something really severe, very significant, something profound to get your attention. Because if you're not giving the attention and addressing the suppression, then the expression will come out like whatever, you know. It's like a kid you don't give if you're a parent, you probably understand when a child doesn't get your attention, what does it eventually do? It does something really, really profound to get your attention. And then you blow up or you flip out, or if you're whole, you can see that maybe you weren't paying the attention to that child that it deserved, because they're just learning how to communicate. And if you don't address them in a way that's healthy, then they end up growing up with the pattern of, the only way I get attention is if I cause chaos. Hello, we've all been there. I know I have. And that sets the pattern, because that becomes your survival tactic, your coping mechanism, and a new addiction to the habits you form to make it through your life. Haven't you seen adults that throw temper tantrums no different than a child? It's because it worked for them when they were a child, and they haven't addressed the fact that they don't need to do that as an adult. They still have their traumas, and that's acting out, and it's showing, hence the shit show. They don't think they're shit shows, but you're seeing and witnessing their shit show. Literally. You can try to deny it and reject it all you want, but it will come back more fiercely because that is also you giving it your power. It's like saying, I don't want this stuff to happen. It's pushing the ball down in the water, the big blow up ball, and it just keeps coming back up in your face. Same darn thing. Same darn thing. You cannot have the light without the dark, accentuating and punctuating it. Literally, punctuation. I swear I was dreaming. I just reminded myself what I was dreaming last night. It was so profound. It was all about punctuation. Profoundness, like accentuation, the reality of how things stand out in life. You're only whole when you own it all. Otherwise, you're fragmented, baby, and you're missing something. And that's where you're like, what is missing in my life? Why do I not feel fulfilled? Why do I feel empty? Right? Just saying, I've been there. Otherwise, you're operating from your wounds, and sometimes they're subtle, and other times profoundly and undeniably destructive, right? Right? And you always get to choose. But why wouldn't you want to choose consciously with full awareness rather than being blindly ignorant of your wounds? Because then you wonder, why does it feel like there's salt in my wounds? Because you're not addressing them. We're usually the ones who have rejected, ignored, and suppressed our own needs. Like as adults, there's really no excuse as to why your needs aren't getting met. The first most important is, are you in the right relationship with yourself? Because if you're not in the right relationship with yourself, then what do you think your partners are going to end up looking like? Well, your friends are going to, your circles, your community, the people you hang with. If you're someone like me, I'm constantly seeking to better myself and evolve and grow. And then I find sometimes I'm in circles that they can't keep up with me. And unfortunately, they die off and, they fall out of my circle. And sometimes I feel lonely. I was having a conversation earlier. I'm like, yeah, it stings a bit, but I'm getting more used to it because I realize I cannot just keep staying down here in the dregs when I'm already past certain points. I don't need to repeat certain lessons. I've already been there and I've done that, and I got the t-shirt and I got the lesson. So when it shows up again, I'm like, not today, Satan. Fuck off. No fuckery in my book. What you're expressing on the outside is always what's expressing on the inside. You just might be out of touch with it. But if you're in that addictive mindset of, I don't pay attention to that, and you escape over here, maybe you have a substance abuse, maybe you have some other qualified addiction, escapism. A lot of people do it. I've seen a lot of it in the spiritual community. They're doing all the things, but again, they're shit shows. You can't hide in spaces and think your stuff's not going to show. If you're not addressing it, other people will be seeing it. And you can do the cognitive dissonance, but your stuff will always come up and out. Like, proverbial leukoplakia over here, verbal vomit, Whatever traumas you are not addressing and expressing themselves out in the world are whirling around us. Like, think about the word world. I was having a conversation with James earlier, and he said the word world, and I heard world like a fan whirling. Exactly. And energy is meant to stay in motion. We can see it as chaotic. It's always chaotic. But you may see it as a positive chaotic, or you may see it as a negative chaotic because of the fragmentation. But if you're whole, you'll see it all as just right. Get a little bit over here, the positive, a little bit of the negative over there, but in together, they're doing everything naturally because that's the way this works in cycles and in flow. Ebb and flow, baby, forward and back, evolving, no devolving. There's really no devolving because you're going forward and coming back, and we're always expanding or contracting at all times. You take a breath in, you expand. You take a breath out, exhale, and you contract. So it is an ebb and flow. You can't have one without the other. Denying that is rejecting it. And when you reject something, it's like that, like the punch to the stomach, right? Years ago, I had pulled out my Osho Book of Secrets, and I was reading a passage that was really profound. And it was where he was explaining, people want to say they don't deny or reject anything. But in reality, every time you choose something, you're denying and rejecting something else. Doesn't make it good or bad. It's just an awareness of it. It's kind of like a check yourself moment. So until you become whole, you will be blinded to the full experience of this life. And what does that mean? It means in wholeness, we see things from a place of neutrality where the two halves of the whole do not appear to exist, but we know they're there. When we're fragmented, that is when we only see the two halves as one half or the other. We don't see the full picture. We're seeing it through our trauma. And the trauma will amplify the trigger. The trigger is what will show up to you. And that's where, if you're in your conscious awareness and you're working on yourself and your mindfulness practices, daily meditations and journaling and reflections, then you go, wait a minute here. I'm seeing a pattern. This has popped up before. This isn't the first time I've been triggered by this. It's not the person, because it's a different person this time. It's something in me that's an old wound that's being rubbed. And when you can recognize that, you can confront it. Because when you feel it, it reveals it, and then you can heal it, or essentially reclaim it. In my book, it's reclaiming it. Because reclaiming it is also meaning you're going to have to remember it, meaning put the members back together where they belong. Just some ideas I'm putting out there. Within the scope of this dualistic and polarizing world, we recognize the imbalance by what shows up outside of us to wake us up to what's really going on inside of us that desires us to ultimately acknowledge, reclaim, and again, remember, like I just said, it's always there to serve you. There's nothing being done to you. There's little pokes and provokes here and there, but ultimately, sometimes that's the only way to get your attention. And you know that. I know I do. My body's been my biggest teacher. Everything from when I used to be a runner and I had an injury falling. Well, I've had a few injuries, twisting ankles and my knees and my right hip and different things like that. But ultimately, appendicitis, like things that become cumulative. Are you paying attention in the moment? Or where was your mind when you injured yourself? That was a big one for me. Years ago, I realized I was chopping some fruits, vegetables. I was chopping something, and I was having this thought process going on. And I know what I was doing. I was thinking about a friend, and I was thinking about their life and comparing myself. And as I was comparing myself, I caught myself judging. Oh, I could never do that. And then I cut myself. And I went, wait a minute here. I didn't maliciously cut myself. I just wasn't present to what I was doing in the moment. And I let the hijacking of the mind, the wet echo, take me into some other place that had nothing to do with me. That's the drama trauma that we create up in here, the battlefield of the mind. So in that moment, I realized, most people want to say someone did something to them or they had an accident, but they don't stop and think, Literally think, what were you just thinking in that moment that brought that out to the surface? Because the harm you inflict upon yourself is the result of an internal harm. A thought is a harm. It's a way to harm someone else is to think about them in a way that's not serving. It's not serving you. You judging someone else or comparing yourself to them is a harm for both of you. Because again, the boomerang effect, you're judging someone else because you don't agree with something they do because you're comparing yourself to them. I could never do that. Okay, well then what does it matter? You're just wasting your brain space. Or we could call that mental masturbation, right? All right, so when we're upset about what's going on around us, all it's doing is revealing what is going on within us. If we can be humble enough to accept that, we can change this world rather quickly. Because what is going on around us? It's revealing to us our inability to tap in and trust what we're feeling for ourselves and others. The feeling is our spidey sense. That's our heightened intuition. The five senses, how we take in data. The more you tap into your five senses, as opposed to numbing them out, because like I just said, if you numb the pain, you numb the joy, you are essentially denying your sensitivity, which is your biggest gift in this world, is those five senses, and then the heightened intuition that comes as a result of them. You're essentially not trusting what you know to be true because you feel it, because you're numbed out to yourself. You're disconnected from the source, the temple. The temple. And then you got a temple here too, and a temple here. Think about that. Do you ever wonder why the eyes are right between the temples? But ultimately between the eyes is the main eye, the intuitive eye. Close thine eyes and make them one. We are more powerful than we realize. Made in God's image. But God's trying to make God in man's image. Oh, that cracks me up every time. It shows how deeply connected we are all truly are in this collective. Because we are a collective collaboration, contributing to the collective consciousness. As you know, I usually will say, if you have to check yourself, is that really your thought? Or are you really that sensitive in that moment that you picked up on the collective? Because the collective consciousness is constantly like, I almost like literally envision it like it's just a stream, because it's a stream of consciousness that we're all contributing to that pool. Like a stream, again, there's a duplicity in that word. There's a stream, could be a live stream. It could be a physical in nature stream, but it's flowing. That's the point of a stream, is it's in motion. And it is showing you that in the moment. So we're contributing to it at all times, but we're also receiving from it, and we're influenced by it as well as influencing it. So when you're healing, you're becoming whole, you're also helping others to elevate in the collective as well. That's how important it is for us to work on ourselves. You're not here to fix anybody else. You can inspire others, you may activate others, but ultimately you working on you is what does it for all of us too. Don't deny that in yourself. Be selfish and recognize you taking care of you is doing it for all of us too. That's like huge. So we're all affected by one another. Like I said, that's the collective collaboration and manifestation that we are all contributing to. I can say it 3 times, contributing to. That's how I fix my flip ups on my words. If we're avoiding pain or chasing a high, it's all in an attempt to control the uncontrollable. And that's addiction. That's the root of addiction. I'm going back to that again. Avoiding the pain, suppressing it, creates that expressing of it. But the numbing of that pain is what causes people to chase the high because they no longer feel. Does that make sense? Does that ring with anybody else out there? So yeah, we are more than we're supposed ourselves to be. We are so much more. And this is the beauty, because the triggers, yes, they are the golden nuggets. They're the gifts that give, that keep on giving, gifts without a bow, as we like to say, that avoiding any pain usually means you've numbed out. And so you're going to be numb to feeling the highs. Let's say that again. If you don't want to feel the pain, you're going to numb yourself out to all the joy. And that's why people walk around looking like zombies, numbed out, escapism, chasing a high with drugs and alcohol, or gambling or shopping or whatever it is, because it's anything and everything that you use to try to bring some sort of gratification and satisfaction to you, because you don't feel, because you numbed yourself to the pain. And that doesn't serve. You have to be willing to go both ways. If you're unwilling to feel the pain, you're definitely not going to be able to feel the joy, because they both serve each other. Through contrast is how we understand what is pain and what is joy. The deeper you're willing to dive, the higher you are going to rise. But remember, you will equally rise and you will equally dive. So it's cycles, it's life, it's the way this works. Whenever you're out of balance, it's not just you can stay neutral the whole time. That's not the fun part about life, is going through all the waves. Like, we are surfing the waves of life. You have to be willing to kind of like get a little wobbly to have a little fun, right? Nobody ever grows inside the comfort zone. The only way you're going to have fun is if you're willing to take a chance. Just like successful business owners, they've failed millions of times, and then you just think that, oh, they just became successful, and you're losing the whole picture. They went through a lot of trials and tribulations, or some of us who have been through some serious life events and shit, right? Oh, she's got it easy. She's skinny, she's pretty, she's got this, she's got that. Project much? You have no idea what anybody's been through. And again, you're comparing yourself. You're assuming that others have it better than you because you're trying to validate your bullshit, your belief systems. So you can't play the martyr, and you can't be doing that. Remember, point a finger at one person, you got 3 back at you. Get ready for the ricochet, and remember that loaded gun comes right back at you. You're never going to escape your own shit. Just say that. The more willing you are to own your shit, it won't own you. It won't come find you in the most inopportune times either. It will actually serve you better to own it, because nobody will be able to hold it over you or use it as a negotiating blackmail tool, or make you feel like embarrassed by it. You know, it's like people who put themselves on display to handle, like, there's people who don't know how to speak in public arenas. They feel, nervous, but they do it anyway. But you wouldn't be able to tell. You don't see them before they walk out on the stage and their hands are, palms are sweaty and they're sweating up, and like, they're like, what am I going to say? Am I going to blank out? Am I going to remember what I was going to say? All this stuff. And the truth comes out. We all have a little fear, but we're supposed to face the fear anyway, because the fear is what builds the courage muscle. The more you're willing to put yourself out there, the more you get rewarded in life. You're going to play small, you're going to lose it all. It's the worst gamble you could ever make. Why would you hold back? You came here for greatness. Now stand in it. Stand tall. Don't play small. I've done that enough in my life too. Where was I? All right. So it's the root of addiction, where we're numbing out to ourselves because we believe that it will somehow protect us from the past and help us from avoiding repeating. It will help to avoid repeating it in the future. Again, this is a whole mind fuck. The mind will actually convince you. If we don't go there, then we, it's cognitive dissonance. We don't talk about that, it won't exist. No, it's right there in your face. And just because you don't see it doesn't mean other people don't see it too. In fact, that's usually the thing that most people are like, oh, don't you all have that friend that everybody's like, oh, here they come, and they act a certain way and everybody's like, yeah. And something's off. And everybody's afraid to say something. Okay. I am that friend that will normally take the person aside if they're willing to hear what I have to say, because I care enough, but only if they're willing to hear it. I'm also not going to impose or force myself on anybody. So you have to learn to discern whether or not that person's open to hearing what you have to share. Don't try to fix, just ask. Would you like some reflective feedback? Are you open to hearing something that I observed? You have to choose your words wisely and see what you receive, if it's an invitation or it's a big old stop sign. All of this is illusions caused by the mind. The mind is such a clever builder. Your thoughts are constructs that the mind uses to create and construct, to build all these stories. And in the end, it ends up being that it's all a story. Everything's a story. As a joke I have with one of my girlfriends. We sat on the beach one day and we were just talking, and I said, how about that story? And she said some other things, and again, another story. And that's a story about a story, because we all got stories. We all got stories. It actually becomes hilarious. This drama, this divine comedy that we are playing in. And when you can find the humor, that's when life becomes fun again. Because your inner child wants to play. And in fact, how many of you out there were told you weren't allowed to do certain things, and you thought to yourself, I can't wait till I become an adult and I can play whenever I want to. And then you became an adult and you forgot all about that, and you forgot how to play. I'm here to remind you, it's time to play. Stop fucking around and stop getting so serious and attaching to bullshit. Call out your BS. It's not helping you. Somebody's got to do it, and it better be you. So again, the mind is going to convince you of things that it can protect you from, but it's all an illusion. It's all a story. Mind can't do shit. It's all like a visual. It's a thought. What's the mind going to do for you? Create a story. And then you've got to confront the story and go, that's bullshit. That's just a story. I can create another story that's equally supportive of me in all ways. But that's when you're in wholeness, that you can recognize how the mind is able to construct a negative story to protect you from being, hurt or establishing another form of that trauma. And then it can also say, you know what, that might have been, but I'm going to try over here. Oh, the best case scenario is you have no idea because we've never been there before. And this is a new situation, which it always is. You can't predict the unpredictable. You just have to be delighted by the surprise. So when you numb the pain, you numb the joy. That's the big one. And that's the whole addictive cycle. It all starts out when you numbed the pain. Because when you numbed the pain, then you started losing your touch with yourself, losing touch with your senses, with your feeling, your ability to feel and reveal and heal and to be whole. You don't want to feel the pain, but you're numbed out to everything. Ouch. So you're not living your life fully and richly in your allness, because you're in your smallness, trying to protect. How's that sound? Is that hitting any like truth? Getting any truth bumps in there? I want to know, is this resonating with anybody? Because this has been an ongoing conversation with a few people, and I'm like over here going, wow. I've been saying for years, the pendulum swings, and we don't realize when we're on it sometimes because we go to such extremes over here and then over here. And then we're like, Why do I feel so exhausted? Because we never take time to integrate and come to the center of our beingness. We allow things to take us out of control over here or out of control over there. And that can be really enjoyable. And then if you have lived a life of chronic on the go, which I did, my girlfriend and I talking about when we lived in Italy and all the crazy things we did. Or this weekend, I was reminiscing with the girlfriend that I was stationed with in Korea. And in 1 year's time, 1 year and 2 weeks, if you count my time, I was just reflecting upon some of the stories, and she was like, wow. She's like, oh my gosh, all the melancholy, and every once in a while, I wonder how people are doing and where they're at. So that was a lot that we did in 1 year's time. And back then, those were the days when, for women being stationed in Korea for what we called a worldwide remote, a year assignment where you didn't have, if you're married, it was without your family. If you were single, it was you by yourself. It was something like 8-1, eight men to one woman. I don't know. My numbers are something ridiculous. And we literally would go from the dorms to wherever we were going, and we could never get from point A to point B without being interrupted by guys along the way that literally came after us. It was the most bizarre thing, but at the same time, it was funny in some cases. It was not funny in other cases. Like literally fighting off people like, listen, dude, I don't have time to talk to you. We'd be talking to each other and they'd come and interrupt us. And I remember one time going, I'm sorry, but we're trying to have a conversation over here. We don't have time for you to interrupt us. And you talk about rude too. That's crazy. That was in another time back in 1995. So 94. Okay, wait, I went into the military in 93. So it was 95 to 96. Whew. Anyway, so when the energy, let's continue, shall we? When the energy is misaligned, a true vibrational connection will be unable to align with another because they're so far out of touch within themselves. So this is where we go back to when you are having an argument with somebody and you're trying to get your point across. Like I started out talking about the story about why people yell. It's not just because they think if I talk louder, I'll be heard. It's literally a disconnect within their energy field. It's a closed off heart. It's not able to express effectively and truthfully. What ends up happening is both of you are misfiring and you can't make the connection, right? You can't create the circuit. We're talking computers, mechanics. Yeah, we are in Mercury retrograde shadow. I guess that would make some sense. But if you're not making the connection, you're exhausting yourself. And that's what happens when we're not in alignment with our heart and soul, is it drains us. It takes our power. Again, if you're in a trauma response and you're in that moment of flipping out, freaking out emotionality, then you're in the moment, like reliving all of that. And that's why people feel so drained and exhausted when they get in those modes of argument. When you are re-experiencing every trauma in the moment you are triggered, that takes your life force. That ages you. Why wouldn't you want to do the work to be whole versus suppressing and denying what is really running your life and creating so much trauma? It's aging you, and nobody wants to age. Everybody wants the quick fix and go and do the Botox or facial stuff. And I just got my breast implants out 1.5 years ago. Just because it's available doesn't mean it's healthy. Having breast implants ended up being the biggest shield across my heart, energetically and physically. And then when I took them out, I was like, wow, I was already super aware and super sensitive, hyper aware, hypersensitive, but taking them out made me go, poof. I couldn't resist. I couldn't hold back. I was just, you know what? I got some stuff to say. My heart was speaking for me. My heart was so tender that I was no longer denying what I was feeling. And I was calling it out with people that were not in alignment for me. They were incongruent with my energy because my heart was like, this doesn't jive, you know? Like, I'm so grateful I did that, because every layer of masking, fakeness, hiding, suppressing, denying, rejecting that we do to ourselves, we're allowing all sorts of crap into our lives. That's the boundary issue. And you no longer have a standard of like, this is my temple, this is my being, I am a queen, I am a goddess. If you can't claim that for yourself, nobody else is going to do it for you. And if you don't demonstrate that in the world, then you'll invite anything in, you know, you'll fall for anything. If you can own it all in yourself, what you truly are at your heart's and soul's level, nobody else can try to own you or take advantage of you. So this is the point of wanting to be whole. And the why we're really here is to be in our wholeness, not in our smallness, not doing what other people tell us to do, not falling for the traps of this or that, choosing sides or giving away our power in the form of loyalty to another that doesn't reciprocate or meet us where we're at. And vice versa. Sometimes we don't meet people where they're at, to the detriment of both of us. So this is actually a lot of what's really going on in the world, is this literally a whirlwind of energies that are unsettled, are just exploding, imploding all around us, all within us. And this has just been pouring in. I got some other stuff I'm going to do another video on regarding the rite of passage. But going on. So as people numb their pain, they're also equally numbing the joy. And I'm going to keep on like repeating that, because it's important that we get this. You're not here to avoid it. That it's a full spectrum of life. To feel the pain is to appreciate the joy. And to appreciate the joy is to eventually feel, or to appreciate the pain is also to eventually receive and appreciate and experience more joy. If you can't, they're polar opposites, or so they appear to be. They're just expressions and experiences. But the willingness to feel, no matter what that is what gives you the richness of this life. We're not here to label it. You labeling it actually is part of the reason that you struggle and suffer. Because for me, sometimes I'm like, wow, that was deeply painful. Like when I said, sometimes it's lonely when I lose friends, and I'm like over here going, I really need someone there to support me the way I've been supporting others. And my lesson in that was I needed to show up for me the way I was showing up for others. So that is my great reveal of that. And I'm like, oh. And by just showing up for myself and recognizing it's a shame, I had to honor also, they weren't able to show up for me. It wasn't that they were even malicious and thinking that they wanted to. It doesn't matter. That's another story. But the truth of the matter that I have found is 9 times out of 10, they couldn't show up to me the way I showed up to them. And I'm one of those golden rule women, like it's the golden rule, do unto others as you want done unto you. That's how I operate. So I have a high standard for myself. So whatever you get from me is going to come from that high standard. And then when I don't receive the same in reciprocity and giving back, I'm like, okay, how do I do that? How do I get that? Well, it all starts with me. Shit, damn, I got to do it for me. And then as I set that bar, then different people show up to me. And so the people that fall out of your life as you're growing and evolving are just making space for the people who match your energy. And so, this is why I pay for mentors and coaching and do all sorts of programs. I've spent a lot of money over the years investing in me because I'm worth it. I'm a sure bet. And it's never a waste. I always get more than I expect because it's about me getting to know me. Sometimes I need someone to make me accountable for me. Sometimes if you got to do it for yourself, it's not always the easiest. And I've done that too. I've done all the different variations. Hence why I share the way I share and what I share. I've had readings. I've done a lot of workshops. I've done a lot of trainings, the teacher trainings and all the different things. I've traveled the world, gone on retreats. Hence why I have amassed all of this life experience to teach from. So I don't take any of it lightly because I know the value in what I bring to the table. As they say, I know my gifts. I own them. And nobody can tell me any different. And I am so proud of myself for that. Like, you need to, good for you. Like the other day, I'm like, I got so much going on at my house. Okay. I've got so many different projects on the fire, let's say. And so when I do something, I'm actually like, you did really well today. Look at you. You got everything you accomplished done that you knew you needed to, or you know what, even if you didn't get to that, that's okay. It's not meant to get done today. And it feels good to give myself accolades and to also reinforce you did the best you could today. Look at you. And how many times I'm like, dang, I want to do a video. I got some stuff to share that I know people need. And then today I'm like, okay, we're going to make time today. Aside from, I've got all the other stuff on the burning embers, right? I got I'm excited. And if you want to know more, you can shoot me your email and I will put you on a mailing list for when things start dripping out. Because what I'm working on is like what I've been in a pregnant pause for over 15 years. And my entire life of experience on top of that. So, again, people that numb the pain, they're also equally numbing the joy. As I repeat that, they're so out of touch with their ability to feel, fully, because they've desensitized themselves in avoidance of the feeling of pain. They cannot have joy without the pain. You cannot. You can't have one without the other. You ever remember that song? You can't have one without the other. So why are we avoiding that? Why? Because we know it may sting, but it's usually just an ego sting. Because if physical, is it going to kill you? You always have to check yourself on that one. You have to confront that little, that gremlin of a mind as it tries to talk you out of it. Because in reality, the whole story it's concocted doesn't even exist. It's an illusion. It's probably changed the whole trauma around on you to the point where it's not even the original experience that you had back then. What does that mean? It means you can call bullshit on it. Yeah, right. I know. I've been saying that a lot too, Pamela. So there are two halves of the whole, which is why addiction is all about chasing the highs, because people don't want to experience the lows that make them all worthwhile. You can't go up unless you're willing to go down. You can't go down unless you're willing to come up. You can't go left without knowing at some point you might come right. Can you keep going left? Can you keep going right? You got to change it up. How funny are we thinking we can out-trick ourselves? Like, actually, the mind tries to like totally hijack us and think we could, the mind's clever. It'll come up with a story and it'll convince you. The worst is when the outside world is convincing you of stories and you're falling prey to them. But your own mind, come on. Even you know your own bullshit, but you're not always willing to call it out, are you? And then if somebody else calls you out, you get even more pissed off because how dare you? That's the ego really kicks in hard there. And then when the ego kicks in real hard, you're like, I'll show you, and make it worse. I know, I've done it a lot of times. If you're unwilling to feel the full expression of life, you will constantly be seeking what is ultimately missing. And that is the disconnect from your heart and soul. That's why I said, the Italians have this way of just, empty-handed, something's missing. It's because when you are numbed out to your full expression, which is the whole gamut, we're here, all the world's a stage, you might as well put on a good show and not the shit show that's blindly happening because you're avoiding it. It's a whole expression. And that feeling of something missing is really you disconnected from your own heart and soul. And that's what makes so many people struggle and suffer, and it's self-perpetuated. But you just have to make little shifts along the way. Change the way that you experience things. Hi, that way. Who is that way? What is your name? Tell me your name, because I see you commenting and I like to know who my peeps are here. People will be unable to hear you if your heart is shut off, because it's not going to make the circuit. Your energy, your expression of yourself has to come from the full embodiment of you, open in your heart and soul. You have to be a clear channel, or people are not going to get you. They're not going to be able to relate to you if you can't relate to you. There's a mic drop. If you can't relate to you, nobody else will. So trying to think, there's a lot of people do that too. It's like, you just don't understand me. Oh, you can't get me, this, that. I'm over here going, do you? Do you? I am that I am. I love that. I like a name if you do want to share. So there has to be a receptive heart opening for us to connect. Neither is open to receive what the other is trying to express and convey. And this is being expressed from the suppressed trauma. The driver is the pain, despite the avoidance and suppression. It's actually the silent master of your life. If you were that person who is suppressing your pain, avoiding it, numbing it, it's still expressing. And that's why it is the silent master of your life, because you're not even an awareness of it, because you're in your own little cognitive dissonance, trying to ignore that it even exists, but it's there all the time. It's the one thing that stands out the most, is the thing that you try to avoid the most. So your senses are out of touch and your nervous system is fried from overload, because it's exhausting to have to keep up with that type of show. Because it's not natural for us to hold back and resist. And we want to be, our natural way of being is to fully be in our heart and soul expression of ourselves, our unique soul self. And so it becomes exhausting, and it's aging us as we are avoiding and denying and rejecting and suppressing. As like, what is going on? Why it's not working? Because the definition of insanity is doing it over and over again and expecting something to change. That's a hell of a, So anyway, avoidance of the repeating of the old patterns. It's the numbing that dulls the senses that feel what is real. So you are numbing your senses, which is your spidey sense to feel it, the feelies are turned off. And it's those senses that feel what is real. And like I say, the body is the truth teller. Whatever your body feels is usually in response to something the mind is thinking. If there's a trigger that sets you off, that brings out the trauma in you, and the drama ensues, it's because something isn't matched or aligned in your mind. And the spine is a representation of the mind. So if you have very strong dogmatic belief systems, your spine may just be quite inflexible, tight, stiff, You might be a tight ass. That's part of the whole spinal column. But it's really, I mean, I'm trying to be funny at the same time here. Because listen, when I was younger, I had a lot of constipation. Okay. I was diagnosed in the military with IBS, irritable bowel syndrome, but it was the constipated version. And they didn't know what caused it. They said it could be stress. But I also realized years later that I figured out part of it was the gluten and the wheat, a big part of it. It didn't get rid of all of it by eliminating it. Although I do believe the breast implants probably had some of that breaking down in my body as well. But you have to get to know your own body to recognize the signs that it exhibits. It's always telling you what you need to know if you're willing to listen and literally tap into what you feel, because that is the embodiment. You hear the buzzwords all the time. I hear people talk about embodiment, and I'm like, that's just integration of the mental stuff into the wisdom of the body, because the body is the wisdom. That's how you capture and hold it in all the cells of your being. It's not just a mind body. It's the whole mind, body, spirit, soul. The body and the mind need to be connected. Like, you can be wise and spout off all sorts of stuff, but that doesn't mean that you're embodying it. You may be just regurgitating a whole bunch of intellectual knowledge, but have you applied it? Have you actually integrated it into your being? It's easy to say one thing, but are you living it? Are your audio and your visual in sync? Are your actions and your words matching? We see it, we hear it all the time. We can witness it in others, but can we see it in ourselves? All right, where was I? I should have put gaps in my pages because when I printed it out. All right. So again, the numbing out is what dulls the senses, that feels what is real. So in avoidance of repeating the initial past trauma, it actually draws in the triggers for your attention to address it. It will finally move in when you do address it. So you no longer want to continue to suppress whatever it is, because that is where each time you suppress it, it's like, if you watch some of my older videos, I like to say that you have an inner child, and your inner child feels neglected. And you think it's being neglected by the past trauma, but in reality, now that you're the adult, you're the one who's meant to reparent yourself. You're the one who needs to tap into your inner child and find out, what do you need from me in this moment? When you feel triggered, tap into your inner child. Ask your inner child, what is this trying to tell me? What do you need? I'm here for you. Because your inner child is essentially feeling neglected by you. Nobody else but you. So when you ask it, it's like, oh my gosh, it's like breathing. It's like finally getting a breath of fresh air, because your inner child's like, you do know I'm here. Just acknowledging that you have an inner child is like, you said something? Can we go and play now? You know what I mean? Like, your inner child has a lot of wisdom to share. They came in pure into this world. We came in pure. We have so much to still do. We're not even close to the end. But when you ignore and you suppress all that trauma and you don't address your inner child, here's what happens. The same thing as I just said. The past trauma draws in the triggers. It's actually your inner child going, hey, you're not listening to me. I'm going to pull in a third party, and we're going to play out the trauma right here. Because you're not paying attention to me, I'm going to call upon and draw in the energy of somebody who can recreate the old trauma again. And I'll keep doing that until you recognize that you're not paying attention to me. That's a big one. And that's probably the main reason we continue to reinvent the wheel around the trauma, doing that crazy thing. Continuing to do the same thing we've always done and getting the same results we've always gotten. And until you do right by your own self, your inner child, it will continue to draw it in like, okay, this is my way of throwing a temper tantrum. I will energetically pull someone in to create and recreate so we can try to see if we can fix it again, because that never happens. Because you end up approaching the trauma that gets re-experienced through the new person and triggered the same way until you address and recognize where it came from to begin with. That inner child's pretty darn wise, even with the temper tantrums. Like, hey, you're not paying attention. We got to work on this. So we'll just keep on doing it until you get it. That's crazy. And I love it. So where were we? So in avoidance of repeating the initial past trauma, it draws in the triggers for your attention to address it, no longer continuing to suppress it. Because once you express it and address it, it will finally move on quicker than you will ever realize. And you'll be like, wow, why didn't I do that sooner? Silly, isn't it? Why would you keep doing it? I know, I love that. Anyway, otherwise you're being run by it. It is the silent master of your life. Your traumas will run your life until you turn around and you address them. When people are in love, their hearts are open and their voices are heard, even with the silent whispers. So, something that's also good to remind you of is that all of this existence is a collective collaboration. I've already said this. And we're not alone in our manifestation. The collective collaboration is our manifestation. We are here doing it together. None of us are separate. And we have a whole collective consciousness stream that we contribute and participate in. You could think about it from the perspective of energy in motion likes to stay in motion. So that collective consciousness is constantly streaming all of the energy that we are picking and also putting back, because this is really what's going on. That's like the behind the curtain energy imprint. And until we start recognizing that's how we are operating on the unconscious level, you have to make the unconscious conscious to really be effective and reclaim your power. I'm telling you, I've had some deep downloads. I wasn't kidding when I said that. And it's how we pick up on each other's energies. You know, just like when you think, I feel like I've known you forever. Yeah, you have. Because none of us are separate. None of us are immune. Even the people you're like, yeah, you know them too. Hello, it's you. Everybody you're meeting is you. Recognize the other as you. And if you can't see God in all, you can't see God at all. And that is you too. And not in the egoic, oh, I'm God. No, it's a, wow, that's powerful. I have a lot of power in me. Can I claim that? Or will I be afraid of it and let someone else feed off of it? Because if we're not loyal to ourselves, we really can't be loyal to another. Loyalty lies, and that could be played with too. Loyalty can be a lie. Yep. Any questions, comments, concerns? Oops, that thing. There we go. So that was what I wanted to share for today, because I think it's a lot. That is a lot. That we really truly are more powerful than we realize. And that until we 100% reclaim ourselves in neutrality, like wholeness. Wholeness for us is not getting caught up and triggered by the stuff around us or even the stuff within us, but accepting, acknowledging it for what it is. It's an indicator. Oh, wow, look at that. I get to choose how I participate or not. I can go along to get along, or I could choose another path. How cool is that? I think that was a long stream. Thank you so much for joining me tonight. I really appreciate it. I'm going to be doing more of these, don't worry. And I am super, super excited. If you didn't already leave your email in the comments, which is okay if you did, you can also send me an email. There's a link on my channel and you can click to email me. If not, put it in the comments if you feel safe enough to do that. I forgot what's my email, levantelana@yahoo.com. You can send me an email there. Life is beautiful. And when you really you come back to your wholeness, like nothing's going to bother you. You're actually going to see the divine comedy in it all. And you're going to be like, ah, hello, I see you. I see your duality. I see your polarity. I see duplicity in all of you. And it's playful because that's really what the universe wants. For you to recognize the divine comedy and play that's at hand. There's much more to be enjoyed. From my heart to yours, I love you so much. Have a wonderful evening, and I'll see you on the next video.